Hello and welcome to lesson 54 of this B1 course with Perfectly Spoken. My name is Ellen and today we're going to have a grammar lesson. Okay, we either have a vocabulary or a grammar lesson, and today we're looking at grammar. Okay, and this grammar I imagine is familiar. Zero, first and second conditional. I know that you studied the first and the second conditional with Lisa earlier on in this course, and the zero conditional, I'm sure you will have studied it in past courses, Okay, so we're going to review them today and see what you can remember. So today we will remember how to form the zero, first and second conditional. Notice differences in meaning. That's very, very important. Obviously, forming them is very important, but also as your English improves, you need to notice the differences in meaning. And we're going to focus on pronunciation and practice using them, practice using the conditionals. Okay, so we're going to have some speaking practice, lots of speaking practice later on in the lesson, so that you can practice constructing them and sounding more natural as you're speaking. Also, I'm going to do some speaking and you're going to listen to me speaking, okay, which will help you with your speaking too. So, first of all, let's focus on form. So, form of the zero, first and second conditional. Let's see what you can remember. I'm going to show you 3 sentences using one of the conditionals, and I'd like you to identify which conditional it is. So here are the first 3, and are these zero, first or second conditional? If the sun shines, the temperature rises. If it rains, use an umbrella. If it is very cold, it snows. Okay, so these 3 sentences are all examples of either the zero, the first, or the second conditional. Okay, they're all the same conditional. Which one is it? What do you think? Okay, the answer is the zero conditional. So if the sun shines, the temperature rises. If it rains, use an umbrella. If it is very cold, it snows. Okay, and here we have if and the present tense, comma, present tense. Okay, that's how we form the zero conditional. What about these 3 sentences? Are they zero, first or second conditional? If we go camping, we will sleep by the lake. If I miss the bus, I won't get to work on time. If you study, you will pass the exam. Okay, zero, first or second conditional, what do you think? There are examples of the first conditional. If we go camping, we will sleep by the lake. If I miss this bus, I won't get to work on time. If you study, you will pass the exam. Okay, so for the first conditional, we have if, present tense, comma, will, won't, and the infinitive. Okay, and finally, which conditional? Zero, first, or second conditional? If I could have any job, I would be an astronaut. If I won the lottery, I would fly around the world in a hot air balloon. If I had a sixth sense, I would hear a wider frequency of sounds. Okay, zero, first or second conditional? That's easy. They are the second conditional, of course, the one remaining. So if I could have any job, I would be an astronaut. If I won the lottery, I would travel around the world in a hot air balloon. If I had a sixth sense, I would hear a wider frequency of sounds. So for the second conditional, if and the past tense, comma, would, wouldn't, and the infinitive. So how we form the zero, the first, the second conditional is very different. Okay, and here is a summary of the form. So zero conditional, if plus present tense, comma, present tense. First conditional, if plus present tense, comma, will, won't, and the infinitive. And the second conditional, if plus past tense, comma, would, wouldn't, and the infinitive. Okay, so this is an overview of the form, a summary of the form of these three conditionals, which is very important. It is very important that you become more natural at forming these tenses. Of course, the different conditional you use changes the meaning, and that's what we're going to look at later on. But next, I would like you to practice forming conditional structures. So this is the first task, task 1, and I would like you to pause the recording and complete the sentences with a conditional structure. Think logically. Do you need the first, the second, the zero, the first, the second conditional, and choose from these forms and complete the sentences. Okay, so pause on this slide. Okay, welcome back. How did that go? I hope that was okay. Let's have a look together at the answers and compare them to your answers. Okay, so here are the 6 sentences and here are the answers. So number 1, I usually see Mary at work. So if I see her, I will tell her your news. Number 2, I only sleep 4 hours a night. If I slept more, I would feel energized. Number 3, if you heat water, it boils. Number 4, if you need help with your homework, your sister will help you. Number 5, if you wanted to talk to her, he would call her, but he doesn't. And number 6, we will have a picnic if the weather is dry. Okay, how did you get on? I hope that it's becoming more natural to, okay, I need the zero conditional, therefore present tense, or I need the first conditional, present tense, will, won't, or the second conditional, past tense, would, wouldn't. Okay, so that's a summary of the form. We've looked at the form, but it's very, very important to think about the meaning of these sentences. So let's look now at the meaning. For form, we had to think about tense, okay? Past, present, present simple, present continuous, will, won't. But for the meaning, we need to think about time and probability, okay? These are very important words, time and probability. I know in some languages, the word time and the word tense is the same, but in English it isn't. Okay, time is talking about time. Is it present? Is it past? Is it future? Whereas tense is talking about present simple, will, going to, past perfect. Okay, there are examples of tense, but time is just past, present, or future. And this is what we're going to think about with meaning, time and probability. So here is an example. If the sun shines, the temperature rises. When is this? How probable is it? If the sun shines, the temperature rises. Okay, this is the zero conditional and it's always true. Past, present, future, always true. Okay, and the next one, when is this? How probable is it? If you study, you will pass the exam. If you study, you will pass the exam. Okay, this is the first conditional, and the meaning is present or future, and it is possible, and it is probable. Okay, and the last one, When is this? How probable is it? If I could have any job, I would be an astronaut. If I could have any job, I would be an astronaut. Okay, this is the second conditional. And here, the time is present or future. Okay, remember the tense is past, but the time, the meaning is present or future. And it may be possible, but it is improbable. Okay, if I could have any job, I would be an astronaut. It's not very probable. I'm a teacher. Being an astronaut takes years of training. Possible. Well, not at my age, but... Okay, so can you see the difference there between time and tense? That's a very good example with the second conditional. The time, the meaning is the present or the future, but the tense is past. Okay, so let's move on to task 2. And in task 2, you have to think about, you're going to think about the meaning. So what conditional do I need? The 0, the first, the second conditional. Think about the meaning, think about the probability, think about the time, and then you will have to think about the form. What form do you need to finish the sentence? Okay, so pause on this slide and complete these sentences. Task 2, think about time and probability, then decide which conditional to use to complete the sentences. Okay, good luck. Okay, welcome back. How did that go? Was that okay? Well, lots of things to think about. I hope it wasn't too difficult. Okay, let's look at the answers together. So, if the sun shines tomorrow, what will you do? So here we have the first conditional. If the sun shines tomorrow, what will you do? Number 2. If you heat water, what does it do? 0 conditional. If you heat water, what does it do? Number 3. If you lived somewhere else, where would you live? If you lived somewhere else, where would you live? Number 4. If you went out for dinner with a famous person, who would you go with? If you went out for dinner with a famous person, who would you go with? Number 5. If you do a sport next weekend, what will you do? If you do a sport next weekend, what will you do? And number 6. If it rains, what happens to the grass? If it rains, what happens to the grass? Okay, so how was that? How did you get on? I hope that you got them correct, or if you didn't, I hope that you understand the mistakes that you made and you can see why they should be completed the way that I demonstrated in the answers. Okay, and now we're just going to have a little bit of speaking practice. I would like you to answer the questions. So pause the recording and answer the questions. Then come back and you can listen to me answering the questions if you want to. If you don't want to, that's fine. Okay, so I hope you answered all the questions and I hope you practice using conditionals in your answers. So let me have a think. Number 1, if the sun shines tomorrow, what will you do? If the sun shines tomorrow, I will go outside, I will drink coffee in a cafe with my friends, I will relax in the sunshine. Number 2, if you heat water, what does it do? If you heat water, it boils. Guaranteed, always true. Number 3, if you lived somewhere else, where would you live? If I lived somewhere else, I think I would live in Australia, near my brother and his family. Number 4, if you went out for dinner with a famous person, who would you go with? If I went out for dinner with a famous person, I would love to go with a famous scientist. So in the past, maybe Charles Darwin or Albert Einstein. In the present, we have Brian Cox or David Attenborough. I think he's my winner, David Attenborough. And number 5, if you do a sport next weekend, what will you do? If I do a sport next weekend, I will go swimming. What will you do? And if it rains, what happens to the grass? If it rains, the grass gets wet, guaranteed. Okay, so there was a little chance for you, an opportunity for you to practice listening to English. I wonder if your plans or your answers to the question were similar to mine. Only you know, only you know. Okay, now we're going to focus on use. We're going to think about pronunciation, sounding more natural, understanding people. And in conditionals, with conditionals, we use a lot of contractions. So we use lots of contractions with conditionals. For example, I will, I'll. He would, he'd. She will not, she won't. They would not, they wouldn't. Okay, sometimes you don't hear these sounds when people are speaking quickly, but with practice and with your ability, as your English improves, to understand what conditional is being used, you can hear the contractions. Okay, or you can guess, you can infer the contraction that should be there. Okay, so I want you to practice saying these sentences really quickly. Okay, so I'll say it once or twice as a model, pause the recording and repeat, repeat, repeat. Okay, number 1, if I can, I'll go to Japan. If I can, I'll go to Japan. Number 2, if my sister goes away, she'll be okay. If my sister goes away, she'll be okay. Number 3, if you don't, I won't. If you don't, I won't. And the next one, you'd lie on the beach for a week if you were Greek. You'd lie on the beach for a week if you were Greek. They'd need a visa if they went to Pisa. They'd need a visa if they went to Pisa. If I could fly, I wouldn't ask why. If I could fly, I wouldn't ask why. Okay, so repeating these sentences, I really think helps you to become more fluid, more natural. I mean, obviously, if you're repeating the sentences, you don't sound very natural, but the more easily you use the language, the more natural you will sound. So I suggest pausing the recording and repeating the sentences, inventing your own sentences. Rhyming words really helps, I think, to remember, and with pronunciation. Fly, why, visa, Pisa is the same sound. Okay, and now we're going to look at some more sounds which are very important to conditionals in our pronunciation focus. So what would you do? Okay, what would you do? That word there, would. Strange pronunciation. And the sound is what would you do? And don't confuse it with ooh. So for example, would, food, would, mood, good, rude, could, chewed. Okay, I think these examples that I've chosen here demonstrate the fact that in English, often the spelling doesn't really help you with the pronunciation. So it's really important to learn the correct pronunciation when you learn a new word or to remember the pronunciation. So would, people often have difficulty because O-U-L-D, the spelling is complicated, but the pronunciation is quite simple. Would, notice, would. Okay, so repeat after me. Would, good, could. And the words on the right, food, mood, rude, chewed. Okay, I hope you can notice the difference in the shape of your mouth. So this is the sound that we're focusing on in the conditionals. Can you think of any other words with this sound? I've thought of a few. Bull, full, wool, should, understood. Okay? And I'd like you to practice making the sound. You might feel silly, but I think it's very useful to look in the mirror and look at the shape of your mouth and make sure you're forming it correctly. Would, could, should, understood. Okay? Good luck with that. I wish I could see you. I wish I could see you. Okay, and let's move on. So now in task 3, we have got a dictation. And in this dictation, I'm going to read 6 sentences to you. I would like you to write them down. So be ready with your notebook and a pen. And I'm going to use lots of this sound, could, would, should, good, and also contractions. So not I will, I'll, not she will, she'll, he will not, he won't. Okay, so be ready for contractions, be ready for the sound, and write down these 6 sentences. Okay, so the first one. If I could, I would be good. If I could, I would be good. Number 2. If he has a party on Saturday, I'll go. If he has a party on Saturday, I'll go. Number 3. If the sun shines, you'll be happy. If the sun shines, you'll be happy. Number 4. If they win, they'll be world champions. If they win, they'll be world champions. Number 5. They'll know what to do if they ask you. They'll know what to do if they ask you. And number 6. We wouldn't watch the match if they couldn't play football. We wouldn't watch the match if they couldn't play football. Okay, so I hope you've written down those 6 sentences. We're going to look at the complete sentences together, and you can check your sentences to make sure you've included the correct contractions that maybe you couldn't hear very clearly when I was speaking, but you will understand the sense from what I was saying. Okay? So contractions and also spelling of words like would, could, good. How do you spell those words? Let's have a look at the answers. So number 1, if I could, I would be good. Number 2, if he has a party on Saturday, I'll go. Number 3, if the sun shines, you'll be happy. Number 4, if they win, they'll be the world champions. Number 5, they'll know what to do if they ask you. And number 6, we wouldn't watch the match if they couldn't play football. Okay, how did that go? I hope that you were successful and that you managed to identify the less familiar sounds and the contractions and write correct sentences, grammatically correct sentences. Okay, let's move on. Now we're going to have, for the end of the lesson, we're going to have some speaking practice, okay? And I would like you to answer these questions using full conditional sentences. So, for example, what will you do if you go out this weekend? Don't just say, to a party. I'd like you to make a complete conditional sentence. So, for example, if I go out this weekend, I'll go to the beach. If I go out this weekend, I'll go to a party. Okay, so use the language to make a complete sentence in your reply. So, what will you do if you go out this weekend? What will you do if you go on holiday this summer? What will you do if you make dinner tomorrow? Okay, so practice using complete answers and practice using contractions. I am. Okay, those are all the first conditional. Now let's practice with the second conditional. What would you do if? What would you do if you got rich unexpectedly? If I got rich unexpectedly, I would. What would you do if you could do any job in the world? What would you do if you got a job in another country? What would you do if you had a chance to learn a new skill? Okay, so answer those questions in full. Okay, so there we go. That's the end of today's lesson. We've had lots of practice with zero, first and second conditional, forming them, understanding meaning, understanding differences in meaning, in pronunciation when we use them, which is very, very important. So I hope that you've learned a lot today, and I hope it's been useful. And thank you very much for joining me today. And next lesson, which is lesson 55, we will review lessons 51 to 54. Okay, so we will review, we've done lots of language in these lessons. We will look at comparatives and superlatives, ED and ING adjectives, shopping vocabulary, ordering and complaining, dependent prepositions, and conditionals. Okay, so there's loads of useful language that we've been looking at over the last 4 lessons, 4 lessons, and in the 5th lesson we will review it all. And I think it's very important that for you to review it and to take a moment to remember all of these useful things that we have learned and that we have studied. Okay, so I hope that you've enjoyed today's lesson, and thank you very much for joining me. And see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.